Welcome to month 2, Digital Dealers exclusive from Kimberbell for 2024. This is month 2, Pot of Gold Jar Topper. So just in time for your St. Patty's celebration. We're going to make this really cute jar topper. Our little leprechaun has gone diving for gold into his little cauldron. Got a sweet little tag on there. So this is our project for today. You're in luck. We're going to go through both things. Wonder if he knows that that's candy and not gold coins. Too bad. He'll find out shortly. Well, I'm going to walk you through the supply list, Kimberbell's supply list, and my own, and all the things that I find helpful and handy to make my projects just a little easier. So join me at the cutting table, and I'm going to walk you through all of those tools. Sweet little project has quite a few little things involved to make this cute project. Let's talk about thread first. There's quite a nice assortment of greens, of course. Some of them will have been utilized in our previous project, but there's a couple new colors, so let's discuss them all, shall we? Typical white and black. White, however, there's many whites to choose from, and I have chosen color number 3, 0003, this white, because it matches beautifully with the Kimberbell embroidery leather in white. So if you're looking for a good match, those are a good match. You might not be able to see that on camera, but trust me. So white and our black, and then color 352 light green. I think it's this one. 352 light green. 721. Pardon me. 731. Gold. 1115. It's this lovely rusty color, and it specifically goes to match the camel brown Kimberbell leather. Then 5613. Whoops, sorry about that. That's this very bright green. It's from the leprechaun legs here. Then for the cute little tag here, we need the white again, the black again, and we're going to use the 5613 bright green for the word luck, and 5912 for my clover leaf. So that walks us through all of the thread. Then we need some bits and pieces of fabric. So there's a couple going on. There's background piece. That one won't be seen again, really. It's hidden under all of the fun here. So if you have something maybe dark that you just don't need or care for, we're going to hide it nicely. Then there's another piece of fabric under all of the gold coins. This was just random. I had it. It's green and gold, which should hide nicely if the coins don't hide it. Then we're going to use Polymesh, which is a light medium cutaway stabilizer. We're going to use fusible woven to help give the base some structure. We're going to also need some wash away stabilizer because the coins are all freestanding. And then a little bit of wash away topping. That's this clear product. Any clear stabilizer like this kind of film, it really should be stored in a Ziploc bag, wrapped in some protective plastic. If you live where I live and it's dry here, this will dry out, crack. That's not what you want. You want it to remain supple. Places that have maybe too much humidity, this can be actually gummy and stick to itself. So I keep mine in a closed, sealed plastic bag. Then there are some lots of fun other materials. We need a little bit of tulle, and you can tulle, very sheer. Bridal veiling is another name. I happen to have some white tulle that has a bit of a glimmer to it. It's actually a glitter that falls off, so sooner or later it'll be gone. It won't really add to the project over time and handling, but we need some tulle to hold some of the coins solid for us. Then we need some Kimberbell glitter vinyl in gold. Then we'll need some pieces of the camel brown. That, of course, it's for our little leprechaun shoes. Then there's the little legs. They were created with the Kimberbell pistachio felt. We'll have a little bit of black. It creates the rim of the cauldron and the little 3D handles there. So we need a bit of black felt as well. And there is some gold mylar. So the gold mylar, it's quite loose. It tends to be silver on the back, gold on the front. We'll be, of course, using the gold side to create some more of the coins in the top there. Then, of course, we'll need our jar. The first sample here is a wide mouth jar. And we have a pattern in the download for you for the wide top jar. And then this is a regular top jar. You can kind of see there's quite a bit of difference there. So today I'm going to walk through making the regular top jar for you. And then the wide top jar, everything is the same until we get to the coins. We're going to make a few extra coins because we have more space to cover. But other than that, the directions are exactly the same. It's just the embroidery files themselves that are different. At the end of the project, we'll need a little bit of water. We'll need a cotton swab to dissolve some of the water-soluble stabilizer we've used. Parts of it will be glue gunned in, so we'll need a glue gun. This one's cool right now, or I wouldn't have it on my mat. And then I have a little container for catching hot drips that I stand this in while I'm working on it. And a little bit of cord. I randomly had gold cord in my stash, so I pulled that out. It worked just fine for tying this tag to the jar. You, of course, could use whatever you have on hand. Alrighty. The other thing I need to mention is this project is bobbin intense. Almost half or more of the threads we're using will need a coordinating bobbin. I also prefer to use a black bobbin when we're working on the black here. So I do recommend, if you have a drop-in machine, that uses bobbin pre-wounds are fabulous. They make me really happy. These are pre-wound with Deco Bob, which is a very lightweight bobbin thread. These are from Wonderfell. I love it. I think the weight on this, 80 or 100. Very fine thread, very nice. Then this is where the bobbin colors come in, because we're going to stitch from the front here. We need the green for the pistachio. We need the green for the leg stripes. We need the brown in the bobbin for the little boots. We need gold in the bobbin for the little buckles. And we again use gold here in the 3D coins. So this is bobbin intense, so you might want to gather a few empty ones to get you on the way. All right, well, let's get started. I am going to begin with my 5x7 hoop with some lightweight stabilizer, and later we also use a 4x4 hoop. So just a little tip, this is your first video with us. I label my hoops in pencil what size that they are and what they're referring to, because when you have a ton of them, it just makes it simpler. This is a 5x7 hoop, and the minimum size stabilizer I've written down here in the bottom, that says 9x12. So I need 9x12 pieces for that size, and this 7x9 piece of stabilizer for the 4x4 hoop. Alrighty, well, let's get started. Okay then, welcome to the embroidery machine. In this first part, we're going to load up 5x7 embroidery hoop with a fibrous wash away. We're going to load our design in. It's part A. It includes the little legs. Now, our first bit of stitching. You can use any color pre-wound that you like. This isn't going to change for a little while. So I'm just going to put a white pre-wound bobbin weight bobbin into my machine. I know that the first true color I'm going to use is the green thread that matches the pistachio felt. Just going to grab that color. The color that I like to coordinate with the pistachio is colored number 0352. Okay, so we have the little legs in our hoop, and almost immediately we need green. So maybe I should have started with green, not white. But this is one that I've wound myself from the same thread I'm using on top. Remember, I did say in the supply list we were going to be really bobbin heavy here. We would have several matching colors. While I have, let's do the next part. We're going to place the felt on the bottom and on the top. You may want to grab yourself a little bit of Kimberbell embroidery tape. It's a nice light paper tape. You can stitch through it and it easily tears out of your design if you happen to get it in places you don't really want it at the end of the day. So a little bit of tape here will keep your fingers out of the hoop. Put as much as you need to be comfortable. I think that I'll put a little bit on each corner there. Then when you're placing anything on the back, lay it down. Do not press into the hoop. You don't want to dislodge or distort what's already in the hoop. It could potentially cause problems where the stitch outs won't align. So just gently put the tape where you want it. Then when you flip the hoop over, I can see where I put it and I can do a much firmer push. One from the front, just to be sure. That all laid out nice and solid. And then hit our color step number 2. So that didn't take us very long. And our next step is to go in front and back and trim away the excess. This trimming is our final edge, so you want to take your time, make it nice and even. I've pulled out my lovely small Kimberbell applique scissors. And I want to trim a nice, solid, steady line here. And I'd like to keep that pretty consistent all the way around. All right, we've got those little legs stitched in. Color step number 3 is a little outline in the pistachio color red. We're just stitching some details in the legs, as you can see here. This is where I switch to color 5613. It's kind of a brighter blue or green. It also requires a bobbin change. Okay, color step number 4, that brighter bluey green. All right, color step number 5. And we're going to swap out the bobbin. Okay, so we have the brown placement line. I'm going to just flip over. We're going to take the brown leather here and we'll center it over the boots. Make sure we've got some top and bottom, left to right. And we'll put a couple pieces of tape in place. Just remember, if you stitch into it, it does remove super easy. When you flip back over, you can go in and give those pieces of tape a much firmer thing. And all right, we have one double check here. We've got clear all the way around. That makes me comfortable and happy. I can put the other color, the second piece of leather on the top here. Tape it in place so I don't have to keep my fingers anywhere near this. And one of the tips I could give you here, if you have a tendency to put your fingers in the hoop to hold things, don't. But the other thing is when you've got all of these leathers and layers and things happening, you might want to slow your machine down just a wee bit, and I'm going to. We'll just give you a little more time to get in there and turn the stitching off if you're having any bit of trouble. Okay, that was color step number 6, and what it did was it tacked the boots in place. Now color step number 7 is the same and with matching bobbin. Color step number 8 is the same. Okay, color step number 9 is gold. We're going to be stitching the little buckles on the boots. I'm going to change the bobbin now to gold and the top. This gold and this brown were used in the bonus design, What's the Buzz? If this is your first time joining us for Digital Dealer Exclusives, we have 12 months of Digital Dealer Exclusives. And the What's the Buzz keychain was the bonus design for signing up for the whole year. And for those of you who sign up for the whole year, you will be given the design for free and a kit to make the project if we have any left. The first 20 to 24 people who signed up will get the What's the Buzz keychain kit. It's lovely. And we are repeating colors all the way through. So if you have not joined us for the year yet, all you'll have to do is ask. We will flip your 1 month registration fee to the whole year registration fee, and we will send you the design for What's the Buzz keychain. And if you start early, we may still have kits available. I can't promise those. All right, color step 9, completed the boots. Color step number 10 requires a bobbin change and an upper thread change. And this time it's black, and I'm not using a black pre-wound. I'm using a regular embroidery thread bobbin that I wound to match the upper thread, because everything we're making here in this project so far is two-sided, and it's nice to have the same thread on both sides. So black thread, same black thread in the bobbin. For the most part, black is black is black. But in the embroidery thread that I'm using, it's also color 0020. It's also 0020 in Mylar poly shape. All right, so the first stitch out is a placement line for our little cauldron handles. All right, color step 11 we need to have our black belt placed over cauldron handles. There we go, taped front and back. I'm going to leave that black bobbin thread in there for the moment. And I'm going to use a bright color. This color will be cut off later. It's the outside cutting line. So you want to be able to see that. I just happen to have a spool of bright blue here. It could be any color that you have handy by. So color step 11, choose a brighter color for the top. So final color is number 12. I'm going to switch back to the black for this part. This is the detail stitching of the cauldron handles. That lovely bright blue, that's our cutting stitch later. It's going to be so easy to trim these out. Okay, that completes this hooping. You see we've got the legs, boots, and cauldron handles. Now we're going to go trim all of this out. Just pop this out of the hoop. Just in a general sense. Get all that excess out of our way. Okay. So, got our little legs here. The easiest way to start trimming these is to cut up between the two little boots, up between the little green legs here. That breaks them apart so they're a little easier to deal with. The important part of this now for good looks when we're done, get in the back and trim off all the tails that might be showing. Okay. Remove that bit of tape there. Can actually use the tape to pick up little straggler threads and strings. First things first on the boots. This top curve here with the cuff, you might want to go in and take that out right away. Can use these small sharp scissors. Any scissors of your choice. Now, just be careful not to cut anything else. So I've lifted this up, and I'm just going to go take off the top of the cuff here. And it's at a bit of a curve, so. Go. Get the tops of the boots trimmed off. Now, that was up against that top stitching from earlier. Now on the boots, there's 2 rows of stitching on the edge there. Hopefully you can see them. The outside stitch, that's actually just a guide for you to trim. So pick up your favorite pair of scissors, and we're going to trim the boots out all the way along. Don't cut into the legs at all. And you're going to cut right on that line. I'm going to come in at a bit of an angle to the top there, so I'm not cutting the leg. The green felt till I hit that, and then I'm just going to go all around the boots, right on that outside stitch line, cutting right into it, so it'll be gone. All the little threads will be gone. But it gives me a nice steady line to follow. If you need to, you can slip back in later and give a trim. I'm cutting both the front and the back out at the same time. Careful in the corners. I'm gonna angle into the top of the boot. But I'm not going to cut down hard. I want to get in and now I still have the bit in the back here. Go. Go. Nicely done. Second one. Also gonna just slip in here now. Trim all of the tails from earlier. You can trim them as you go along. Sometimes that's a little easier. They don't get caught up in other things. But they're not... Oh, I'm so sorry. I was out of screen. Just been trimming all these tails. They're not very long, so they tend to not get hung up in other things, but you could have trimmed them as we went along. And sometimes when it's still in the hoop, it's a little easier because the hoop holds everything up and flat for you. Anything that's not supposed to be there, little shreds and tails. So I've trimmed the boots out on that outer stitching line. Removing any little thread tails from starting and stopping. These little curvy scissors are awesome. You can get really nice and tight to the project. These little bits of tape, you got little fuzzy bits stuck. You can pick them up this way. Get more than one use out of it. Oh, there's another thread there. Okay. Now I'm going to go in with these very small, very sharp scissors, and I'm going to trim that water-soluble stabilizer off right to the felt. You could also go in with that bit of water and a cotton swab. This also, if you didn't have a same cut front and back, you can now trim them up so that they are the same. If you can't get in there easily with scissors, that cotton swab dipped in water will erase that aqua mesh right away. And I don't feel the need to dip those in water for the moment. They're pretty clean. Then if you remember, these are the little handles on our cauldron. Let me bring that back in. There they are. So there's nice detail stitch in there in black. It's probably quite difficult to see on camera, but we have that light blue there. It's going to make it super simple for me to get in here and trim these out, because I'm going to cut them right away on that blue line. So the blue line will vanish. But it gives me such a brilliant line to follow. Let's switch to smaller scissors here. You can see the little blue threads just fall away once you cut into them. But that's such a nice thing to have that cut here line. Back in the day, a lot of instructions would just say, oh, cut them about 1/8 of an inch from that final line. Some of us could see that easier than others. Some of us can trim that easier than others. I could see some thread tails there. There we go. Nice. One cauldron handle. And another. See, if we had done the stitch out in black, it's impossible to see without amazing light. And not all of us get to sew in bright sunlight, so it's quite nice to have that line. Now, you do have time to rinse the legs if you wish. You have time to soak them and dry them if you want this all gone. If you want to make the legs stiffer than they are, you would just get the water-soluble stabilizer wet and let it dry, and it does dry hard. Where it went in the hoop and it was soft, if you dampen it and let it dry, it will stiffen the legs for you, and then we do get that kind of nice stand up. They kind of like to do it by themselves if you prop them that way, which is quite cute from the front. So there we have it. Now, part 2 is another 5x7 hooping, 9x12 cut wash away. Here we are back at the machine. I'm going to set up for file B, which includes all the gold coins. So I've loaded that into my machine. Looking ahead in the instructions, I'm going to need gold bobbin thread, and I'm also going to need gold on top. So for the next couple steps, I am going to just go ahead with that. I have my 5x7 hoop with water-soluble stabilizer, the fibrous type in there. I am going to start color step number 1. Now, earlier in your instructions, I had mentioned there was a piece of green gold fabric that I had chosen for this. Just happened to have it laying around. It could be any kind of color that might work under the gold. Little pre-prep, I got the fusible woven pressed on there. The green is much larger than it needs to be, but it was a remnant, so the fusible woven is large enough, so we'll put that down there. And then we don't want to commit our fingers to any kind of danger, so let's just take that in place. Don't want it to shift while we stitch it. Alrighty, so we're not going to trim the outside of the fabric in this step, but we are going to trim the fabric out of the middle there. It's quite a small space. Maybe a little hard to see the gold thread on the green gold fabric, but I've brought my teeny little micro tip scissors. I brought my little curvy scissors, and I want to dig in here and stitch that out, but I don't want to cut the stabilizer. So keep it on a flat surface. I'm going to use the point on those scissors to start a hole. And then I'm just going to very carefully trim this spot. If you remember that the little legs are kind of standing up, this is the hole that they go into. If you happen to cut into that water-soluble stabilizer, there's sticky back water-soluble stabilizer, and you could put a stabilizer bandage over that hole if you happen to make one. It's not the end of the world. Okay, I think I've got that dug out the best I can. Put it back in for color step number 3, and we're going to get a nice satin stitch around that hole. Gold on top, gold in the bobbin. Alright, so there we have color step number 3 completed. Color step number 4. Okay, color step number 4 gave us some placement lines where we're going to lay down the Kimberbell gold glitter. Now, when the glitter comes to you, there is a hard, clear plastic cover. You want to peel that off. You don't want to stitch that in, so this is quite crispy and quite sticky. And the glitter itself is quite soft, quite pliable. So we just want to lay that over there so we get gold coins just there. No fingers, no fingers. Let's put a little bit of tape down. The glitter actually likes to wiggle about quite a bit, so do get that in there. All right, color step number 5 is complete. We'll take that out of the hoop. We can remove this tape. And it's really hard to see the gold thread on the the glitter vinyl. So what I'm going to do is trim away all the excess so that the little gold coins are left behind. Doing that, of course, on a flat surface. All right, there we go. Got a few gold coins there. Trimming close to the stitching, but not into the stitching. Color step number 6 is placement line, again in gold. Okay, so color step number 7 is gold top and bobbin. We're going to be using the gold embroidery leather. Just gotta see where I have to cover here. Just want to make sure that I'm covering up all the pieces. When I started this, I basically gave myself a kit. I'm gonna tape the leather down, keep my fingers out of the hoop. You will save yourself a little bit of time if you pre-cut some pieces for your own kind of Kimberbell kit. Ooh, almost had a catastrophic failure there. A misjudgment in size. I didn't quite place it, but I did catch it. Whew! Luck of the Irish happening here. I could have been a little more generous out there. But nonetheless, there's enough there, given I'm going to come in and trim quite closely to the stitching anyway. So close to the stitching, but not into the stitching. Trying hard not to cut into the applique underneath. Because basically we're layering up our piles of gold here. If you haven't had the opportunity to use some of these products earlier, these are great applique fabrics that don't need a lot of stitching because they're not going to ravel. And the products are quite soft, so we don't have to haul out the big scissors to get through here. Also, we have to be careful under there not to cut into the stabilizer. There's always a fix if something goes wrong. Like I said, you could go back in with a piece of Aquamesh Plus, sticky, water soluble, and give yourself a little stabilizer bandage there, that you wouldn't lose your project. So just trimming that a little tighter. There we go. Sometimes you get little points and they don't appear to be as round as they can be. We can go in and fuss those out. We have a couple layers of gold coin there now. Now our next color step number 8. It's going to be a placement line. All right, so color step number 9. It's a bit different. The pieces we've recently laid down. This is a bit different. There's that tool that you can barely see. You're going to make a tool sandwich. Essentially a piece of tulle the gold Mylar, and then another layer of tulle. Kimberbell instructions has you tape down each layer. You can make the sandwich. It's going to go over top of those pieces there. I believe if you've got that sandwich reasonably together, you can lay it over top, come in, stitch. After taping just the top layers, it holds it well enough. If this happens to shift or get wrinkled, it's fine. Just a little extra texture. Alrighty, so step number 9, got them all stitched down. We'll remove that tape. Then we'll trim the tulle up against the little gold coins. Trims quite easily, just up against the stitch line. Try not to cut into the stitching. Then the Mylar itself actually tears quite easily if you tear towards the stitching. Then we only have to deal with what's in the middle. So if you're having a hard time getting your scissors in there, this is a great spot for those Kimberbell tweezers, as we can get in and pick up those little edges. Get in there with the scissors as well. Sometimes your fingernail, whatever works for you. There we go. So now we have our little piles of coins. And that last layer of tulle will also be trimmed out. If you have access to white tulle or beige tulle, we often have that here in the store, so don't go looking far and wide for it. I had a spool of this glitter tulle from some craft project a million years ago, so using it up here seems like a good idea. I wouldn't spend my time looking for glitter tulle, however, because you can see that at the end of the day, the pieces are really small. The glitter flakes off. It's not really going to add anything to your project to have it. Just happened to be something I had around. So I'm going to just flip to the back, and I'm going to tidy up all of these tails before I get to the final stitch, which will be a nice heavy satin stitch around. But if we don't clean these out now, they'll just be a bit bothering in the way on the final step. So I'm going to just do my best to trim all those little tails out, but not cut the stabilizer. This might be one of those places to kind of podge in there with a piece of tape with not too much force, remember, because this is the back. Just going to grab a piece of tape here. Just pick those pieces up gently so I can see what's not trimmed and what is trimmed. Put all those little stops and starts from each layer. If we don't remove it, we'll get kind of hairy little coins. You can try to trim at the final end, but you run the risk of cutting into the final satin stitching that's right on that edge, and then the whole thing unravels. So I'm doing my best to avoid that. There we go. I think I can live with that bit. Okay. That's enough fussing. And color step number 10, satin stitch, gold in the bobbin, gold on top. Alrighty, that completes our embroidery for part B. Just take this apart, meet me at the cutting table. Just going to take this out of the hoop here. Just going to separate the coins. Just going to pull them out of the stabilizer. Maybe remove even more. We don't need the stabilizer here like we do when we make lace, for instance, where we like to have a good amount of stabilizer left over, and it acts as a piece as starch. So this bit, I've got my little glass of water here. I'm just going to drop them in there, let that dissolve. And then our next piece here. I'm just going to trim away the excess. We don't need it in the way. Then we've got the top of our jar starting to form. Now remember that was that hole in the middle there. Just gonna trim away a bunch more stop and starts from all that satin stitching. And then for this piece, we're just gonna dip our cotton swab into the water there. I'm just going to put some into that opening, front and back. Don't really need it anywhere else, just for that opening. So what we want to do is break down what's going on there in the middle. We just need water. We only need it just in that hole there to break that apart, because that's where the legs sit, is in the middle of that gold pile. So we have to get that open. Alrighty. Not quite enough water yet, but it's starting to break up. You could, of course, take this to the sink and rinse it all away if you want to. It just requires a little longer drying time. I'm just going to keep putting water in there, and then I think I'll let it sit there for a minute. And then I'm going to get started on our final embroidery. For our final embroidery, we need a 5x7 hoop with a light mesh cutaway in there. Alrighty, so welcome to final hooping. Got a light mesh stabilizer in my hoop, as you can see. Just want to show you that cutaway also comes in black. If you didn't want to have white showing on a black embroidery, which is what we're going to be working on here shortly, you could sub in a black stabilizer. There's also some creams available, which are quite handy in white, behind white projects. So if you don't have a 4x4 hoop, which you could use for this, you could use 5x7. It really only needs 4x4. The design is quite small here. I'm actually going to put black rewound bobbin in place there. So I'm working on black, and if bobbin starts to pop up to the top, it'll be less obvious if we have black bobbin thread. So I'm just gonna load up here. The first part of the stitch out does not matter what the top color is. The circle is approximately 3.5 inches, so you can see where that would have fit in a 4x4 hoop. Save yourself a little bit of stabilizer. All right, the first color down, there's a piece of black. I want to tape that in the hoop so you keep your fingers out of the way. Always protect your fingers. This piece is a little bigger than what is asked for in the instructions, but I just happen to have a piece of black that size, so I just threw it into my kit. It could be plain black like that. I also had a remnant of that black gold, which was just like the green gold. That would have been big enough to cover that circle, but we can use that solid black. I tend to have a lot of solid black hanging out. Now, color step number 2. We want to switch to black. Step color number 3 is green. It's that nice bright green from earlier, although it could be any green that you. All right, I put that on close up. I was hoping you could see those are little tiny shamrocks, little detail, kind of a fun detail. All right, so, color step number 4 switches back to black. It's just going to stitch out a little placement line for us. Those 4 little corners are a little hard to see because it's black on black, but they are placement lines for that earlier piece that we stitched, which now has a hole in it. And the instructions ask that you set the majority of coins to the front of the hoop. And then, of course, we're going to want to tape that in. Make sure I have that centered. Color step number 5 is black. Nicely done, easy to see. Remove this bit of tape. Grab our applique scissors and we'll trim the excess away. Close to that black stitching, but not into it. Now for this next part, it says to use a visible color. I'm going to pop that green back in. It's a placement line for the cauldron handles. Alrighty, so we have those little placement lines in place. Got our little handles from earlier. We're going to switch back to black and stitch them down. Now what might be difficult to see on camera is the little black on black stitching. There's 2 little bumps here. I'm going to put those on the 2 little bumps we just stitched out. Tape in place. Hopefully we can see. We'll put those 2 bump ups on the other side. Tape those in place. We have our black thread in for color stitch number 7. Okay, so that stitched our little handles in place. Just going to reach in here, remove the tape. You can see we've got those little 3D handles stitch in. Now our next layer is some wash away topping. Just going to make sure we cover all that. I'm going to just borrow that tape on the top and the bottom here. We want to make sure that entire center is covered. Just repurpose those pieces of tape. They've served us well. They're not necessary. If you have a square of topping, you could tape on all 4 sides. This is bigger than the hoop. And again, if this gets somehow bunched up, don't panic. It's a wash away. It will come out. So the first color stitch number 8 is going to just have a placement line in black. Now the next bit is a piece of felt. We're going to just center that over the circle we just stitched out. You'll want to tape that in place. All right, so what we've done here is stitched the felt down into the top of the cauldron. Pull that out, remove the tape here on the felt. Then we're going to just grab our applique scissors and we are going to trim the exterior excess away, close to that stitching earlier. Little bump there. So this will be the final line showing. So we're close, but not cutting into the stitching. If that needs a bit of tidying up, we can certainly do that much easier while the topping is in place. Just a couple little bumps that could just be a little smoother. Okay. Now the next piece we're going to remove is out of the center here. We're going to try really hard not to cut through the topping underneath. I'm going to cut that inside curve with the curves with scissors. I feel like I can get a nicer trim line. I'm just going to lift the felt a bit so I can see where I'm at. Make sure I'm not cutting into the stitching or the topping for the moment. There we go. So we've exposed the center of our cauldron. Stitch color 10 is going to be gold. We're just going to add a few more gold coins to the project. Okay, there we go. Those are the placement lines for our gold vinyl. And remember last time I was placed a little funny and I almost came up short. I think this piece is a little too small for me. Ooh, this is much nicer. You just want to make sure that you're covering all of those placement lines. The way that this looks, it's going to pull that out a little bit, make sure. Tape the gold embroidery leather in place. Okay, so another layer of gold coins. Take the tape off. We still need the topping, so we're not going to trim that away. I am going to take my scissors here and just release the gold leather. Now we'll just go in and trim our gold coins down. Can almost believe these are real with all the layering we've done. Color step number 12 is still gold. Okay, so we've got placement line for the last layer of gold coin. Remember, the glitter vinyl needs to have that protective cover removed. We'll put that down. Take that in place so it doesn't jump or lift on us. All right, that completes our colors. I'm going to take this over to the cutting table. I've got one final trim to go. Remove the excess glitter vinyl. Remove this section from the hoop. We'll remove the tape to start. And we'll get in with our scissors and trim out our final set of coins. All right, there we go. Now we are going to remove the topping and any tape. Typically, I find if you tear towards the item, you get a much cleaner tear. Reach in the middle there, pull those out. Our lovely little tweezers will really help in here because we can get right into the corners and pull water soluble out of there. It has served its purpose, which was to keep the layers separate while we stitched them and trimmed them and did all that fun stuff. Okay, nearly there. Okay, so There's our little pile of gold. Now, that green shamrock embroidery from earlier, we're going to grab those pinking shears. And next to those, not too close, within about a 1/4 inch, I think is plenty good enough. Just going to trim the background. And the stabilizer away. Okay. Creative little mountain there. Here we go. Now, if you recall earlier, that little pile of gold coins that we had put in our little glass of water, I have fished them out and I just dried them off. They are attached by travel stitches, but they'll be gone momentarily. I've also preheated my glue gun. Now, if you see any topping there that's might be bothering you, that cotton swab will go in and help you erase those bits. Now, remember our little legs from earlier? Well, we need those now. We're going to pick up this centerpiece in the side that has the more gold to it. Just going to kind of fold it up. There's a little pocket here. It's actually quite a hefty little pocket. But we're going to put our little legs in there. So, just to be sure that I can know where we're going, I'm just going to work them into that little pocket. Make sure that they fit, that the pocket's big enough. I haven't even glued them and they stand up. Hilarious. They're hilarious. They're quite adorable. So, we're going to slip some hot glue in there to hold those legs down for us. The directions have you open this pocket, put glue down in on this side. Now we can do that. Or you can get those legs in there. Use my stiletto just to help push it in there. Kind of flat. There we go. So they are in there. What I'm going to actually do believe this is the direction that they've asked for them to go, but I don't think at the end of the day it matters very, very much. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up a little. Get my hot glue down inside there. Push the legs in. If I use the stiletto, I won't burn my fingers. If you get glue on the stiletto, it comes out quite nicely. If you want a little extra security, you can sneak a little bit of glue in the back. We do want to kind of lift the gold up a bit. So there we go. So it does look like a pile, and it does look like that little leprechaun is diving in there. Won't he be surprised when all he finds is candy? Alrighty, so we have little stringy stragglers. Just going to pull them off with this tweezers. We have this little freestanding bit of gold love here. Just going to grab my little teeny tiny scissors here and just trim that little thread. If I see anything else sticking out, now's the time. And on the back, we'll put a little hot glue and we'll just increase our pile of gold. If you can see any of the green background through, you can use these to cover it up. We're just going to go in and make more gold. Put it wherever you want to. Spilling out over the edge of the cauldron. Whatever works for you. Look. And just a wee bit of glue in the middle. I think I need another stick in there. All right, so we have all those little gold pieces in place. Then I have my little jar of gold. Make this just a little easier. Can bring the little feet through. Bring the little cauldron handle up over that edge. Let's make sure I've got a decent fit, not too much sticking out. Looks pretty good. If that, you need a little more firmness, you can actually put a little glue on the top here, glue it into the center of that as you start fitting it in. Well, let's do that one too. Okay, so those two pieces. A little bit of gold glue in the top center on the circle. Just let that cool for a second. There we go. Super cute, isn't it? Well, there you go. We've completed our pot of gold jar topper, cute as can be. We get 2 different sizes in this month's files. And one's for, of course, a wide mouth jar and for standard mason jars. Now, so there's a 2-for-1, but wait, there's more. There's 3-for-1. The You're in Luck tag. So that would be a fun key fob. In this instance, it's just a little add-on to the project. I'm going to just walk you through the different bits and pieces that we need for this bonus project. So in this project will be released February 1st. So this, of course, is going to be done in plenty of time for St. Paddy's Day in March. Maybe this year you might want to give everyone a little jar of candy for St. Paddy's Day. Just give them a little boost up, maybe make some key fobs. Be kind of fun. So the second bit here, the little key fob or label, they call it specifically the You're in Luck gift tag. So a couple things. I'll walk you through those over at the cutting table. So do join me there, and I will take you through the supply list for the You're in Luck key tag. So what do we need for this part of the project? Well, it's a small amount of things. First, 4x4 hoop. That's all you really need. If you don't have a 4x4, 5x7, something smaller. For most machines, 4x4 is one of the smallest hoops. There are machines that have little tiny ones, but for the most part, 4x4 is everyone's smallest choice. Then wash-away stabilizer, the fibrous version is what Kimberbell's showing and asking for. If you don't actually have any wash-away, you could actually use a white cutaway in this project, because when you're done and you trim the tag out, it would just leave white between white. No one would ever notice if you used white cutaway. So just a little tip there. The next bit would be what's so very, very hard to see on camera is the wash-away topping. Then we need a couple pieces of the white embroidery leather for the actual tag. You may, if you're using the wash-away and you have to clean up some, you'll need a little bit of water and maybe another cotton swab. And there's a little bit of sewing in this project. After we get the embroidery done, we're going to flip the tag tip over and we're going to sew on the front here. So you may need a clover clip, not necessarily pins, because they're going to mark the leather. So a clip of some sort to hold it. Then you're going to need some thread. Now, black and white for sure, and a couple of the greens is what we used in ours. The other important thing with the white, you're going to need a matching bobbin, our black, the bright green, which was 5613, and this one is the 5912. Those are the colors that I used in this fob. All right, and this is just some random gold cord that I had at home, just to tie that on the jar, make a little ribbon, maybe not. Something that you like to hold that tag. Alrighty, so join me at the machine and we'll get started. I already have the design loaded. I'm going to take out the bobbin I had in previously, which was just a nice black pre-wound. And for this part, I'm going to start with a white pre-wound. I don't need the matching bobbin just yet, so I'm going to use my white pre-wound. Get started. Now, actually, maybe, you know what? Get that going in there. Going to load the hoop. Now the very, very first stitch out is a placement line, and it really doesn't matter what color the placement line is, just as long as you can see it. But I know that my very first color is green, so I could save myself a rethread of the machine. Right now there's gold in it. I'm okay with the gold, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that. I'm actually going to use white for the next stage here. There is opportunity to use color if you have a hard time seeing that trim line. But if you are a little worried about your trimming later, white might be your best choice here. So go ahead and thread up with white. That is of course what Kimberbell's suggesting here. What I'm suggesting is if you have a hard time seeing that cutting line later, having it in another color could be helpful for you. The trick is just you're going to have to be sure to remove all that stitching. So the next bit here, I'm just going to turn this so I can easily see the top and the bottom. And I'm going to place my leather both on the just on the front of the hoop here, but I want to make sure that I don't miss a spot. So you can kind of see there. Got to make sure I have enough top and bottom. And then side to side. Just going to put a little tape in there so it doesn't shift while stitching. It's nothing worse than having something jump or misalign. And the important thing to remember about this embroidery leather is once the needle's pierced it, there's a hole forever. So we want to do our very best to make sure there's no wiggling or shifting. Okay, so we now have that locked in place with those stitches. Just going to remove this piece of tape here, this piece of tape here, and I'm going to lay in that topping. The topping is going to be most important at the bottom there for the embroidery of the shamrock and the lettering. Just helps to keep the stitches on top of your product, and when you do those little micro letters, they are sometimes a bear to have stay nice in some materials. So a little bit of topping, it helps. So I'm going to use that first green 5912. And this is actually color step number 3. The first one, of course, was the placement line. Second color was tack down line. And third, we're actually heading right into the embroidery here, and we're going to be stitching out that shamrock. So you, of course, can use whatever colors you prefer. Alrighty. We're finished with the green. Color step number 4 is black. And we're about to do what I refer to as micro lettering. It's quite small, and on some fabrics it tends to sink in and makes the letters very unclear to read. And although this does not say in the instructions, I'm going to switch out that white bobbin thread for a pre-wound black, just in case, because some machines really struggle with nice micro lettering. And quite often, some of those struggles can be avoided by using the same color bobbin thread, or sometimes just the bobbin thread could be the color of the background fabric, and that sometimes helps with the strangeness. And topping, micro lettering on just about anything, I prefer to use topping. So color step number 4, I changed the directions slightly by adding black bobbin to go with the black top. Upper thread slipped out, so fortunately I don't see it here anywhere. No, I'm going to have to trim from the top. So if you lose your thread or have a break or shred, hardest part is to know how far back to go. So I'm just gonna re-thread here. And then I'm going to use my handy dandy broken thread icon and just stitch back a little bit. It looks like the whole end is missing. There we go. I think when I finished the eye and jumped to the end, I lost the thread. So here we go. Alrighty, so we're finished with the black, and we're about to stitch out the word luck in the nice bright green. I also happen to have pre-wound in that exact color. Or not a, pardon me, not a pre-wound. It is pre-wound, but I did it myself. So I am going to pop that in there in case I have any funkiness with that micro lettering, because of course I just want to do this once, not twice. So there's a few little insurance pieces that I've learned over the years. I take a minute and make those possible. It can really make a difference in my final product. And if you happen to be making these as fun little friend gifts or office gifts, like, how fun to brighten someone's day up, right? Alrighty, so we are already on color 6 of 6. Before we stitch that out, we have to add the other piece of leather to the back. We might want to go in here, well, it's still nicely held by the hoop, and trim some of these furry little bits that might stick out the sides. You can kind of see here that micro lettering. It can get really dense, but having the same lightweight bobbin thread in there, they're not too bad. When I use the 40 weight embroidery top and bottom, it's a bit thicker, but I know for sure that I don't have any bobbin pops in the front that make it look a little bit shabby. Now just remember, when you're putting something onto the back of the hoop, it's nice. I can see through to the front through that stabilizer. So I can center this piece in exactly the same place. Just place your tape gently. Do not put any real pressure on there. And when you flip it over, then you can press firmly where the tape is on the back. I can see it through the design here. And we're going to now change that bobbin back to color number 3, which in this case is white. But if you recall, color number 3 was a very good white match for the leather. If you wanted it to show, you could certainly do it in black or green or gold, whatever makes you happy. But I'm going with that white, knowing what's happening in the final step here. So again, I've got the topping still in place. I'm going to put white top and bobbin. And it's color number 3. And this is color step number 6 of 6. So really quick little project here. The topping perforated there. Not a big deal, but I caught it before it became super entangled. Take that little piece out and carry on. All right, well, I've got this here in a really good close-up. You can sort of see there's some jump stitches in there. Some people, they don't bother. Me, I need to have them gone. The easiest way is these teeny little micro tips that I can get flat on the project and get a nice tight trim. And often still having that topping in there makes it really easy to get in and just trim that and not actually have any little accidents where you nip into your background fabric, because there's still that little barrier of topping. And if you need to remove those little micro stitches like I do, because I see them and they drive me crazy. If that's not you, then skip this step. But I like to do this step before I remove the topping. Because in these micro letters, I find they muddy the lettering a bit, and they look messy, and they're not messy, they're quite cleanly done. And now that we've learned that matching bobbin thread sometimes is the answer, sometimes it's not, sometimes you don't need it at all. But in this case, I did it because it made me happy. All right, so the next thing we can do, now that the wash away is nicely perforated, we can go in and pull it out. Oh, there's a tail from the stop-start there. Just get small things in there. The little micro tip tweezers we have are going to be handy in some of the smaller places. All right. Meet me back at the cutting table, we are going to trim all this out and move on to the sewing steps. Got my handy dandy Kimberbell scissor set there. Just going to pop this out of the hoop. Be the easiest way to trim that nicely. I'm going to just clean up those tails first while I can see them. There we go. So that's the final stitch line we see on the back. Very difficult, of course, white on white, but I can see it well enough to trim. Before I remove all the topping, I'm just gonna get in there with my little micro tweezers here and just work that water soluble out of the small areas. And if it's very difficult for you to get in there and grab it, remember, it's water soluble. It erases with water. And if you don't want to submerge the entire piece, you can simply use a Q-tip. You know, just any old cotton swab. We maybe don't really need the super fancy things for, this is not for use with babies, it's for use in the sewing room, so, you know. There we go, pretty much. There's nothing shiny and sparkly on there, so that means I've got that all away. A little bit sticking up there, just under the stitch. Gone. All right then. So I've got that all sorted. For this, I'm going to switch out to those beautiful 8-inch French European scissors. They are glorious. And that initial line that we stitched out in white, but I mentioned that if you have a hard time seeing that, you could use a color, but you would need to be sure that you remove all those stitches. So a perfect match is not always your friend when its job is to show you something later. And when you hit it just right, the stitches kind of jump right off. If there's any little fuzzy bits or tails there, they just pull right out of there. And if you need to do any little finessing, the little scissors here, this is just a wee bit squarer than the other side. I got a nice curve on one side and a teeny tiny point on the other, so I'm just going to pull that out of there. In the corner here, it's all the knots from earlier kind of sticking out there. So you can see the washaway's in there. We haven't rinsed it away. So if you're out of washaway, I fully endorse putting a cutaway in here and just even leaving it in there. It doesn't require removal. There we go. So, final step. We're going to take the tab, fold it to the back. There's a stitch line right here, a little hard to see, and the stitch line here at the top. We're going to align those on the back. and we're going to stitch this down. Now I have a slightly different way of stitching pieces like this, and remember I said you may need a clip if you need that to be held for you. I'm just double checking my alignment. Looks pretty good. I don't like to back tack here, go across here and back tack here in such a small space. What I'll do is I'll start semi in the middle, go to the one side, go all the way back to the other side, and then meet up in the middle, and then there's one bar tack, one join, one little join there. I like one rather than two on a space this small, and certainly in embroidery leather that every hole is permanent. And if you don't actually hit this dead on, don't panic, it's the back, but I'm pretty sure I've got them right on top of each other, and I'm going to sew from the top because that's the side I'm going to care about the most at the end of the day. Meet me at the sewing machine. Welcome back to my sewing machine. I've flipped the machine over to sewing. I've actually put a zipper foot on as I can really clearly see where I'm stitching using the zip foot, but you can use whatever foot you find handy. If it's your regular zigzag foot, go ahead and head with that. Sometimes you can move your needle out a little bit. I'm actually going to move it out so I can really see where I'm at. And remember I said I'd like to start sort of in the middle. I'm going to remove that clip. It's done its job for me. I've got things anchored down with the presser foot. So I am at about a 2.5 stitch length, which looks a little bit like that. So I'm going to stitch forward and pivot there. I hit the top stitching. I'm going to go back all the way to the corner of the top stitching. So I've gone all the way to the right and left on the tag. Just going to go back and meet in the middle. Now you might have a reverse on your machine, and that might make you happy. You might have a stitch in place. That might make you happier. Use my scissors to cut that. Release the foot, and then ever so happy. I would say that's a 99%er. That's great. Just trim off those tails. If trimming those tails so short make you nervous, a little bit of fray check or something there. And now you can see a little bit of top stitching that I did. I did between these lines and right on that line that I embroidered out earlier. And now, there you go. You're in luck. I have my You're in Luck tag completed. Got my gold cord. Got my regular size mason jar. I'm going to figure out how much cord I need. And kind of about there. The first piece I had was about 20 inches. This one's, the lid's a little smaller, so it's only 18 inches. But whatever you like. Big bow, small bow, no bow. Whatever makes you happy. I'll just thread my cord through the fob. Kind of pull those up nice and even. little bit of a bow, or no bow. And then there's the front. I kind of like the bow just on the top of that. And there we have it. Our fabulous fun little bit of Irish luck. Thank you for joining me for Digital Dealer Exclusives Kimberbell's 2024 version. Just remember, if this was your first month with us, if you sign up for the entire year, you will receive the design to make What's the Buzz keychain. It's adorable. There's actually a spot here in the back. It's a keychain, and there's a spot for your chapstick or maybe some essential oils, some small tiny bottle, your lipstick, whatever. So there's that. Design will be included with your 1-year subscription. If you are in the first 24 to register, we are including at no cost the embellishment kit to make the keychain. If you happen to miss what we did in month 1, let me remind you, these are the pillows. Quite lovely. So in month 1, the spring pillow, you receive both size designs. This one's done a 5x7 hoop. This one's done in an 8x8 or larger hoop. They're quite pretty. I really enjoyed making those. We learned some fun new things in there. So by all means, you can jump back and register for that. So I hope to see you a little more often this year. I hope you enjoy these lessons. If you are, please do like, subscribe, share with your friends. Why should they not be included in all the fun? And, just give us a little shout out so that we know you're there and we know you're enjoying the program. Thanks so much. Have a great day.